In today's episode, we have with us Mr. Vincent Avanzi, the world's only Chief Poetic Officer, I believe. I am excited to speak to Vincent about how poems or being poetic can change the world. And so welcome, Vincent. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much, Tay. Likewise, delighted to be here.
So a poet, huh? I haven't had a poet here before, I think. Now, let me just ask you, we had a conversation before, previous to this, and you mentioned that you used to work with Microsoft, and of course, you've written lots of books about this as well. So we will talk a little bit about that in a minute, about your books and then your philosophy about poetry, how you can change the world. But I just want to have a little bit of background information about how you got from being at Microsoft to becoming the world's own Chief Poetic Officer. So if there are any other Chief Poetic Officers out there listening, let us know, because I have never heard of anybody else who's a Chief Poetic Officer. So what is your journey? How did you get here?
And I hope after this interview, there will be more and more. And to go back to what you're saying, the first poet you have on your show, it's actually not true, because this is my only mantra in my life, is the fact that poetry will save the world and that we're all poets. So you've only had poets basically on your show, because we actually all have that poetic side. It's in the ancient Greek, poiesis means to create, to make. So the poet is not just a dreamer, it's also a change maker, creator of new worlds, something that's somebody that's very active in the heart of the city to the evolution of mankind. And I think this is what we all try to do, to be on a quest of being ourselves and of being useful. And so that's what we all do. It's not just about writing rhymes, it's about being active for the positive evolution of mankind.
Okay, I'll take it all back.
That's a more broader definition of poetry and poets.
Thank you for that explanation. So we've had lots of wonderful poets here before. It's my reintroduction of who poetry is. So,
including you.
Including me, I'm also a poet. We will talk a little bit more about that in a minute, how we connect that with our work as well. So tell us, how did you get here from Microsoft, which maybe you would not disagree with? Doesn't seem very poetic to me, but
I think I'll go from Microsoft to Apple in that sense, and come back to Microsoft, because I remember that sentence from Steve Jobs, who said how you can connect the dots in your life. And he connected his dots were basically passion for design and skills and that's what made the marriage of both of them made the work of art of the MacBook, of the iPhone, which is really, really a much more artistic product that can be a traditional PC, personal computer. And for me, when I thought about that, is what are my dots? How can I connect them? How can I make them converge into a path of life that actually corresponds to who I truly am and what I want to do, what impact I want to have? And when I thought about I have a real passion for poetry. I've had that since I was a teenager when I was living in the States. More actually coming from hip hop first, and then going from hip hop to actually a broader universal sense of playing with words and to see how you can actually take away the genre of music and our culture just to be able to speak to everyone. So it was more about the writing and the poetry side. Passion for that. Then I had in my studies, I did a business school in France, and so I have that background. And I stayed 5 years in Microsoft, as you said, and then I created 2 startups online also. And there's a beginning of maybe 10 years of actually more on the business side of it, so skills in business. And the third part was basically all the self-development work or spiritual exploration that I had done, because I had the chance to go twice on a round the world tour for a year each, and that actually won by life basically gave me those world tours. The first one primarily, and it really changed my trajectory of life. It connected myself to the unity of humanity, to harmony, to how we can be a universal communion together. And basically that's the third part, is basically all that self-development work on yourself to elevate yourself. And when I put all those 3 things together, it became basically corporate poetic conferences, the poetry, the business, and the spiritual work. And that's what I'm doing today. I'm a Chief Poetic Officer, and I gave myself a life mission to re-enchant the world with poetry to create a world of harmony. And that's what I'm doing in corporations, on climate change a lot, on how do you elevate your leadership also. But I'm also doing that in schools and in prisons also, because basically the idea is just to elevate yourself, finding your path and just living a more poetic life and having a poetic approach to how you can live this one life that you have. And if you're an impactful leader, then you have a great impact to actually give. So it's about bringing soulfulness in what you do, and also just taking another look at life. Basically, that's what poetry does. When you have that sense of being dazzled with things, or seeing the subtle, the good, the kind, the beautiful in people and things, you have another look on things, and it elevates your condition and your way to actually interact with others. So a convergence of those three things. That's what I do. And I've been doing that for the last 10 years. I have a lot of gratitudes to be able to basically in my own singularity at the service of humanity on an everyday basis, and to be fully myself and the help at the service of others also. Yeah, I have a lot of gratitude, and I was actually thinking that like 6 months ago, that I'm okay with doing that for the rest of my life, because that shows my path, and I know the way I do it will evolve in times, given the context of the world and things that can be of priority. But in a sense, I'm good in that path of life that I'm in. So yeah, a lot of gratitude to be able to live as a poet in the world.
So like a purpose or a sense of purpose.
Absolutely.
So is it similar in your mind as well? So as I'm listening to you explain, it's almost for me that kind of purpose that leads us to create that fulfilling life. Or is poetry just an expression of that? Or is there a distinction in your mind?
No, there's two things that I feel like I found my own path of life. This is my purpose in this life, so that's what I'm doing. And the poetic side is because I actually use poetry for its magic and virtues of it, being basically the fact that it's a language of peace and freedom, where we can actually find the right word in our communication to have a peaceful conversation and relationship. The second virtue is the more the land of possibilities, how we can all contemplate an ideal or a common horizon for our common future tomorrow, to be able to imagine possible futures tomorrow. And also that emotional touching, how we can speak from a heart to a heart. And that I actually feel that as English, which is the international communication language, poetry is also the other modern Esperanto, given a sense that when you speak from the heart to the heart, you speak to everybody. So I'm actually using the virtues of poetry to actually deliver a message of harmony, is what I'm saying. Yes, in those two sense, a purpose, because it's my path that I actually love, and I actually feel that it's a way to also save the world, or actually bring us together to co-write the future. So in those two senses.
We're going to get a practical example of this, listeners, in a bit. But first, let's have a few more questions about what it all means. So how do we use poetry in communicating sustainability in a way that we can help other people connect with it? Because this is essentially what you do. You're using your poetry to communicate the benefit of the planet. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I'll tell you some things that I do. I deliver a lot of poetic speeches to open and close conventions, like inspired speeches to foresee a new world tomorrow, a different possible horizons. I also deliver a lot of poetic conferences where actually it's about how you can re-enchant the world as poetic leaders. It's on the impact of words, the power of dreams, the audacity to be yourself fully. And it's basically it's an experiential conference where I asked all the participants at one point to write a poem or a poetic letter to the future, a more poetic manifesto of their leadership, to actually write that to express how they want to contribute individually to our collective success. So they write it in silence in that present moment, and then I invite them to go on stage by volunteers to actually share their works of art. And it's a wonderful human spectacle, because there's nothing more beautiful than somebody that is aligned with what he or she says and does or think. And that's why that I was saying, I have a lot of gratitude to be able to do what I do, but also to witness that, because that you see the blossoming of a human being, the intronization of somebody as a poetic leader, also as your human leader. And so I work a lot on that question also in trainings in the art of poetic leadership, how you can deliver. And that's basically the ultimate goal of what I do, is how you can, and everybody can do that, but it's how you can write and deliver a personal speech with the universal reach.
Mm.
And I think people say you can't please everybody, you can't talk to everybody. I actually do think there's a thin line where you can actually express yourself in an inclusive way where you can touch people's heart because you're speaking to the heart, from the heart to the heart. And that's what I'm teaching and expressing so that they actually witness that, try it, and then understand, all right, okay, so I can do that with my team, I can do that with my audience, etc. So work along on that poetic writing and use of words where you're intuitively writing in your flow area, so basically with your heart, and then rewrite it with your head, but so you can express really who you are, because there's only one of you, and that's how you can find your light and enlighten the world with it. So I do that, and I work also on a lot of on the poetic identity of brands also, to actually have an identity that's aligned with what the company actually does, and to also bring some soulfulness, because I think it raises our conditions as humans. And also I think we're at a time where we really have a climate emergency to actually shift the direction of the world and collaborate all together. And we see how complex it is. If you don't do it with your heart, that's the only possible way you can have a poetic revolution where you bring some heart, some soulfulness, even capitalism. That's what I'm trying to do, trying to humanize capitalism, so we have a direction that's more on the long-term essentials than just on the short-term profits also. So a lot of sustainability, because it's that sustainability, you're envisioning a sustainable world tomorrow. So you need to actually feel the fact that we need it, we want, and that's what we're essentially here for. Also to have a world that's in harmony with nature, also in harmony with the living, basically, not just for humans, not just for nature, but actually reconcile both to actually, and that's one of the titles of my poem, is be one with the living. That's our goal today, I think, to be able to return back to essentials as some primary people were actually living, and also to have a balance, a lasting balance between all populations and all cultures. And I think it's one of the most important things we need to try to reach today.
It sounds really fascinating. And I have watched some of your videos on YouTube, so I know what you're talking about. So I can't wait for you to share maybe a poem with us in a minute. I think the way you described it is so beautiful, and it all makes sense. It didn't make sense to me so much before I had listened to them. I'm like, how does this work? How do we use poetry in changing the world? And sometimes we get so stuck in our heads and we're trying to make sense of it. And the way that you describe it, initially it didn't connect with me, but when I did listen to you and watch you on stage, just wow, this is super powerful. It is so powerful, the way that you communicate and the way that you connect, like you say, with the heart. Even though I'm talking about it, I'm like shivering a little bit, because I think in this whole business world that we exist within, sometimes we'll forget the heart side of communications. And even in storytelling, they do tell us, be authentic, but you go another level deeper than just being authentic in your messaging. That's what I felt when I was watching your YouTube.
Thank you. The thing is, there's two dimensions to it. It's about the poetry and the poetics. The poetry will be how you can actually use the right words to actually be heartfelt. And the poetics is how you can live poetically your life. And I think there's nothing more poetic than to actually be fully yourself. And that's what we're talking about, how you can put your singularity at the service of humanity. Once into your own light, it's basically when you're in your own singularity, your own vulnerability, that you actually connect to the others, and to choose a path of life where you're fully yourself to actually enlighten the world, but also you lead by example. You're giving the example of actually you being fully yourself, and it works, and so people can do the same also. So it's a poetic way. There's nothing more poetic than to be yourself and to actually found your purpose of life, your reason of being, your gift to the world. And that's what I like to call it in a poetic way, your genius spot. Is basically your point of singularity, your gift to the world. We all have a gift, and we all basically, people write their poems, I'm always connecting them to their singularity. First, because of writer's block, for them to also already have a word to actually start writing, but also because to connect themselves who they are fundamentally. So what I'm asking them is, what is your keyword of life? If there was one keyword of your whole vocabulary that actually could define you, characterize you, symbolize you as a human being, what would it be? Basically, it can be something you're mastering, something you're in quest of, or something a quality that you have that you bring to a team. What is your one keyword of life that you want to dedicate your life to? And so I usually say, as an example, my word is the word harmony, because it's harmony within you, with others, with nature, inside organizations, religions, what have you. And it means balance also. And I feel like it's one of the most essential words for the future of humanity. And I always ask them, what is your keyword of life? And why is it that? What and how you manifest on a daily basis. And for example, in my personal legend, that word didn't just come in. It was so actually when I was traveling in my first world tour in Asia, somewhere linked to Buddhism, Nirvana, and I encountered that word harmony at a point of time where I didn't really need so much to put order in my life, but I need to put more harmony. And it actually stuck me, and it actually that's when it became my mission of life, in the sense that everything I do say and try to do, I always put that prism between me and the world, because it's and I always have that as a compass in my life, and everything that I do does respond to that. And so any word that you want to choose, the fact that you have it in your mind, that you know this is the trajectory you want to have, the purpose you have, it's very simple. You can say what are your 3 or 5 values, but it will actually more diffuse the message. If you have that one key word, and it can evolve in time, but if you have that one key word, it's more simple to give it a clear direction to your action, your thoughts, and your words. So that, and the other thing is that as there's Toltec agreements, if you're familiar with that, it's about speaking with integrity. So any word, and trying to do your best also. It's about how you use words properly and make sure that what you're saying is saying with authenticity, as you were saying, but also honesty, and that that you're using your power of having an audience in front of you, of impact, in a good, soulful way. Also, you're here for just one lifetime. Make sure you just at least do a little bit of good, or bring the world in a better state that actually you found it in. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So you work with a lot of business owners and some like leaders, really high up leaders. Do you sometimes feel like there is a little bit of disconnect in terms of them, like too much in their head, not enough in their heart? So when you start working with them, do they struggle sometimes to find what their message is, or what their genius spot may be? Or does that generally come fairly easy, would you say, for most people?
To be honest, I work with CEOs, with a lot of the chief sustainability officers with Fortune 500 companies, and same in France and abroad. And things that it always come back to the same thing. I speak to the human being. And so they are definitely in their head, and I'm also in my head primarily also, but it's about how you can actually connect it to your body and your soul and your spirit or your heart. And it's basically how you embody what you're saying to actually feel it. And once you come down to take all the things out and just come back to who you truly are, that one word is basically, there's nobody giving me like technical skills as words. People you choose family, love, adventure, or empathy, or any word in the vocabulary. And the thing is that it's about finding that uniqueness inside the universe, that you can actually, that your own personal definition of it. Like I always give an example. We can all have love as a keyword of life, but we will embody it in a singular way, because there's nobody having the same experience of life or knowledge of the world as you have. And even the CEOs, the same thing. It's about building a complete way to actually have that singularity and purpose, and so that person can actually fully express themselves to the extent of where he or she is giving a part of their intimacy. Because I always ask them, what is in your personal legend? Why are you here? What is your legitimacy? What happened in your life? Might be a trauma from your youth, might be something that happened to you that actually brought you to actually find out that purpose. What is that purpose? Express it, so we actually feel that you're actually not just using that in an opportunistic way, but you're actually embodying that in a very singular way. So it actually, no, my role is actually to push them in that direction, to make them find what their own personal universe is, and also to make them try something new. And they usually do, because leaders generally are in a posture where they know they have that in them to actually try to explore, to be a pioneer, and they love also trying to influence people in that direction. So no, it actually gives very beautiful things. And the thing also in the role that I have is basically to put yourself in a deep inspiration mode when you're actually starting writing. So all the things that are actually coming in the conference prior to that, actually leading to you just being like, I want to write about this and blah 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 blah. And so it's a very, very fluid way, just because it's about being in your flow basically. And so no, it's always beautiful, and I think it's just about authorizing yourself to do that and having the opportunity to do that, and because we never do. So that's what I try to do, to use poetry as in its most beautiful magic virtues. There's an American poet that has a great definition of poetry. He said, poetry is the voice of the fourth of the singular. in the sense that it's between when you're writing, the I, the you, the he or she, and the we. It's between the he and she and the we. So basically, when writing poetry, you're not yourself, you're not the world. You're in between those two spaces. You're connected to your soul of mankind, to the heart of the world, and that's why it really gives you something. When you're writing, it's very difficult to write poetry about hatred. You're always connecting to the ideal, to an optimistic, hopeful way of seeing the world, and that's what a leader actually is supposed to bring: hope into a conversation, to actually have an expressive vision that's inspiring, spiteful, and insightful, and then people want to follow. And that's hence the personal speech with the universal reach. What is your vision? What is your storytelling? What is express your dreams? Connect yourself to the dreams of that which you have for our common future. And then also, what's your positive impact? Where it's human, social, environmental. Express that also, and express also in his speech. I give them a matrix of how to write an inspiring, impactful, and moving speech, and with the 4 H's that I give. And it's basically, it's about that, having a complete speech that making it insightful. And so both for your speeches and your posture as a leader, it's a beautiful way to actually see a leader becoming a full, complete, and poetic leader.
So do you think there is always a space for the leader's story and expression in his or her business? So sometimes you're working with the business branding in itself, right? And then you've got the leader there. Is there always in your mind a connect? Does it have to connect back to the business? Or do you see what I mean? Because sometimes quite often I speak to brand owners and they don't want to be involved. They don't want to share their story within their business because they see that as irrelevant. So I'm asking this question: in your mind, how important is the leader's or the CEO's story and his vision in terms of the business that he's creating?
Well, that's the thing, is that there's definitely if there's no connection whatsoever with you and the brand and the purpose that you're actually serving, why are you here? I'll take it the opposite way. And generally, people actually have a connection to it. You're not here by coincidence. It's about you. It's about looking at why actually, or why is it legitimate? And just actually think about it. Okay, maybe that might not be your purpose of life, but in a sense, it's just ask yourself those true questions. What do you want to dedicate your life to? Even I do a lot of life coaching also to help people find their path. And sometimes I ask them, like, you can either convert yourself to something else, to another life project or another company, another, maybe it's not, you're not in the position you could. I think a world of harmony, an re-enchanted world, is a world where actually each and every one of us is in their own zone of talent, and in their own talent, that we're all serving the same purpose, and you're serving the world with what you have, what you give to the world. And maybe sometimes it's about finding gradually your path, and somebody that's not in sustainability that actually wants to get into sustainability, it's about starting today to actually go into that direction, to actually reach the position you would like to have. And for leaders, the same thing. If you're a leader and you don't believe in your brand at all, or you feel like it's not any brand, you can actually convert it in a positive way also. That's whether you're in energy, whether you're in your spirituals or anything like that. How do you actually make use of whatever the situation to make the world a little bit better? And if you just actually think about it and think, I would actually love to be in that field because that's what I want. My passion is actually here, and I know I'd be much more dedicated to it. I start going that direction also. It's about finding your true place and space in the world. So I think, as we all have one life, and the fact that it's about being, just trying to find yourself and being in the right position. And sometimes it takes time. It took me maybe like 10 years, as I was saying earlier, to actually find the right spot that I'm actually in. But it's about it's a path of life. It's about leaving a positive trace, and also to actually, like I said, as a leader, lead by example. If that's your model, the one that you're most, some people, it might be their most influential leadership act to actually go into that direction. So, okay, say this is I want to follow his path because he found himself or herself, and by going to that direction, because we all have, we have one life, but there's still time, so we can try to find our specific spot to be really who we are and to be in service.
So I guess essentially, if you feel there is a disconnect, maybe there is a connection that you have not explored yet, and
And generally, yes, we generally there's always a connection to make. I was just saying the opposite side, but yeah, there's always a connection you can make just to express because there's a brand and also the position you're occupying. So what is okay? You're as a leader of this team. How can you actually make the elevate the team towards a higher purpose, to a more common good? So it's about connecting to that elevated purpose, and not just that just the corporate side of it. So
now, if I was to write a poem today, now I'm like, okay, this sounds great. I would love to do this. How do I start? Do you have a simple framework or strategy that you can share with us in just a few minutes?
Yeah, yes.
Or is it more complex than that?
No, but I'll give you some tricks to actually get to it. But I know it's with the journey that I'm proposing. So actually, if there's any company that would like to actually live it, with pleasure to actually deliver them to you. But no, the first thing is to actually connect yourself with your singularity. So find your keyword. What is your keyword of life? Find that word. And it's basically, it's inside you. You already have it. So it's about bringing it out because it's what you actually breathe every day without even knowing it. But that's the fact. That's actually to actually go back to the essentials. Find that right word. Find that one word that you want to change the world with. And then the only advice that I will give you is basically express how you want to contribute to the world with that one word. And write with your heart and read it with your head. And basically just with any knowledge of poetry that you may have, just start writing what comes to your heart and just start writing. Who are you? What do you dream of? And what do you would like to commit to? Those three, start by those 3 points. I am my genius spot. I dream of, what's the world that you dream of the world, and what do you commit to? That's basically the scheme that I give for the poetic letters of the future that I make CEOs, and actually on a lot of climate change on that specific question, and start writing and see what comes out of it. And you'll see we're all, like I said, we're all poets, and you'll see if you give yourself a chance, poetry is accessible to everybody. It only takes a pen, paper, and a heart and the words, and that's why it's one of the most used artistic forms in the world throughout history, and that's what it was originally. Poets were in the antiquity, they were basically at the heart of the city, here to give a positive horizon to new worlds for the future. And that's just reconnect to that. You don't bring poetry to the margin of society, but bring it back to the heart of the city. Try it. So you're welcome to try that and see what happens. And you stop it whenever you want, because when we say there's basically a work of art, you never finish it. You abandon it. Once it is what it is, and that's what art is. Because when you think about it, I always give that definition of art, but art is not reserved to an elite genius. There's no truth in it. There's no criteria, no skills. This is basically an expression of a manifestation of yourself to the world. It's the basis of mankind. And because there's nobody we're all dust of stars, so we're going to all create a work of art. So it's just about authorizing ourselves to actually do that. And once you do that, then you can start doing it in a daily basis, and poetic messages of gratitude to your teams, and use also poetic quotes. Bring anything that can bring some soulfulness in what you do and what you say, because yes, if you're here, you might as well try to bring some good to mankind.
I love that. I love that. And actually, it's very simple. I am, I dream of, and I commit to. We can all do that. And actually, I'm just listening to you, and I would love to live that life, that world that you live in your brain, because it's so beautiful the way you describe how life essentially is to you, right? It's very poetic, it's very artistic, it's creative, it's beautiful. I'm like, I want to live that life.
But that's I like to call what it's called basically a poetic life. I have a balance of working for my family life, or for doing other things that I actually take care of. So about how you look at the world, how you actually being a service to the world, express some empathy, being in connection with nature. I always take time to I live in Paris, but I always go outside of Paris also to actually, take time to be connected, because as a city person, I'm not connecting to the earth because I have concrete jungle being in my feet, and I have pollution in the clouds above me, so I don't see the stars. So I need to have that spiritual side when I go out also. It's about believing in love, believing in and living, not just believing, but I mean living in love and good virtues of life. So it's just about
how beautiful, though, to be able to lead from that space where you go to
exactly
work feeling that beauty of your work. I think so many of us forget to enjoy
Exactly.
Those poetic moments, that beauty of the work that we've all created. We're all creating something because we want to make a difference, but then we forget about the meaning of it all sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And we forget to connect to our inner purpose of why we're doing it and that poetry that we can share. So now,
Charlie
yeah,
Chaplin said that poetry is a love letter to address to the world. And I think it's that point of from coming from the heart also to actually bring kindness and love to the world in harmony. I think it's a beautiful way to look at life and to also look at others, because you were saying like going to work, look at your colleagues not just as you know, when I'm talking about usefulness, I'm not talking about profiting of others on others to be useful to your purpose. It's about how we can all basically be useful to the common greater good. So yeah, it's about having that a human interaction with people to actually create a beautiful work of art of your life. And people say, I like to say that we're all poets, and you can also say we're all poems as such.
I love that. Now, would you like to share a poem with us at this moment so that we can get to experience the beauty of your words?
With pleasure. It's called A Message to Poetic Leaders. So, dear poetic leaders, what will be left for us in the future if we can't do what's right in the present? We don't want to go down into history. We want to go up in the future. Do we want to create a better society for the few or a better society for the future in harmony with nature as mankind may have now matured? I don't know if big or small is beautiful, but I think together and forever are wonderful. Business mixed with a little bit of wisdom for a global happiness kingdom, because the poetic leaders of the future, they care about the outcome of humanity and not only its income. So please come and let's all rise. Us, not the temperature, but us as sincere creatures on our best human behavior to create a better place for you and for me that we can all nurture. Yes, a poetic leader for humanity, beauty, and sustainability, imaginary, visionary, even revolutionary, as we're all responsible for the same thing, and that is for the living. By all means, in all dreams, reach for the stars, your star, to become who you truly are, from your deepest scars to your shining star. We all have a voice and we all have a choice, so we can be part of the solution or part of the pollution. In the end, the future will be magic or tragic, depending on how we act in it to save it. So be you and be useful. Be great and be grateful. That's the new beautiful, as we'll only be successful if our planet remains wonderful. And remember, in this great turning and world transitioning, we're not history in the making, we're the future and amazing. So welcome aboard the Universal Poetic Leadership. Bon voyage in this mankind can also be kind journey, for the sake of our common fate all across this exceptional planet, because poetry will save the world, and we're all extraordinary poets. Thank you.
It's so beautiful. I could listen to that over and over again. Now, if we would like to work with you, if any businesses out there, business leaders or conference owners, whoever would like to work with you, how do we find you? And also tell us, what do you do? What do you do for companies and leaders?
Yeah, so I have a website called vincentavanzi.com. You can find me on LinkedIn also. I have about 100 videos that you saw, poetic speeches and keynotes also on YouTube. But yeah, basically on the website, vincentavanzi.com. Do a lot of poetic speeches, either customized based on what the company wants to open or close their convention. A lot of poetic performances, sometimes with duets also with other leaders or musicians or what have you. Sometimes some videos or things like that to connect also with nature or different kind of things. I do a lot of poetic conferences called that's what I was saying, Enchant the Future as Poetic Leaders, which is basically on the power of words, on the impact of the power of dreams, impact of words, and power of being yourself also, where they actually make it, they're writing poems and poetic letters and going on stage to share it. It's a beautiful team building event. It's a wonderful human spectacle, and it's also a training format that can happen during a day or half a day, basically on their art of speech for leaders. also on the brand identity, and also I'm a speechwriter for a number of CEOs and chief sustainability officers, so to do some individual one-on-one coaching and speech writing for them to actually be able to express themselves in a good formulation and punchlines that are actually aligned with who they are to be more impactful also. Basically, all the above. And with pleasure too. So yeah.
It was beautiful. It was such a pleasure to share the morning with you and just get some beauty back into the day. Actually, a great way to start the day. In the middle of the day now, but yeah, it really changed the mood of the day just to talking about poetry. And so I am a poetry convert, so to speak.
Wonderful.
I love that.
And thank you for the invitation and the good vibration that you give to your podcast. Thank you very much. Very much needed also. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will drop all the links in the show notes. So check out all the YouTube videos. They are beautiful. Check out the website. Grab Vincent. Work with Vincent. Let's have more poetic leaders in the world. See you next time.
Thank you so much.